See, you don't quit it, and you don't quit in sports. You retire. You don't get to quit. It's not an option. See, someone told me that a long time ago. That ain't even an option. And the person told me that, he ain't here anymore. He died. This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Randall Handles Football Podcast. I am your host, Randall Tevis. Well, we finally made it to Week 17 of the NFL season. You know, this has been a very tumultuous year. There's been a lot of ups and downs, some postponed games, some nearly canceled games, a lot of cases of the coronavirus, aka COVID-19. And well, I didn't think we would actually be getting here through a full entire 17-week season, yet here we are. And so I think we can all just take a moment and just count our blessings for actually having a full NFL season. After a bunch of stoppage and canceling in a bunch of other professional sports leagues, namely the NBA and the MLB, the NFL did a very fine job of protecting its players, sitting players out of games, and doing what they needed to actually complete a whole season. So here we are in Week 17, and we've had a completed season. So we're thankful for that in this very weird 2020 year that we've all been experiencing. So before we get into this week's matchups, just to review a little bit of Week 16's matchups, overall, I correctly predicted 11 games and incorrectly predicted 5 games for a record of 11-5 last week. My 5 incorrect picks were Indianapolis beating Pittsburgh, which it took a ferocious comeback. I heard it was the largest comeback in the Mike Tomlin era in Pittsburgh, for Pittsburgh to actually come back and win that game. I picked Houston to beat Cincinnati, which that game did kind of come down to the wire, but ultimately Houston showed that they couldn't stop the run again, and they lost that game to Cincinnati. The Cleveland Browns losing to the New York Jets. That is now the longest win streak for the New York Jets in the past, I believe it's 3 seasons, as they've now won 2 games in a row and ensured that the Jacksonville Jaguars will get the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. I picked the Las Vegas Raiders to beat the Miami Dolphins, and it took a last-second field goal by the Miami Dolphins, Jason Sanders, to win that game, which is crazy because Las Vegas kicked a field goal with about 30 seconds left in that game to take the lead, only to blow it in the last 30 seconds. I really thought Las Vegas was going to win that game, but they again showed that they're just not up to the challenge. And my last incorrect pick was picking Arizona to beat my San Francisco 49ers. So there we have it. Those are my 5 incorrect picks. My lock of the week last week was the New Orleans Saints, and they did take care of business in a big way on Christmas Day. I think they put up a 50-burger on the Minnesota Vikings. So they handled their business. And my upset of the week was the Carolina Panthers beating the Washington football team, which again happened as well. And right after that game, the Washington football team actually released their number 1 pick from last season, Dwayne Haskins. So now Dwayne Haskins is a free agent, and there's rumor that he may go to the Los Angeles Rams, which I think would be interesting. So we'll see what happens there as well, okay? So again, last week, a record of 11-5. Now moving into this week, Week 17, our last week of the NFL season. There are no Thursday games, no Friday games, no Saturday games, no Monday games. Every single one of our games is scheduled for Sunday. And so with that being said, I'm just going to run through the slate of games scheduled for Sunday. First off, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars traveling to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Now, the Colts are in a weird situation. Chances are they're going to win this game. Jacksonville's not a good team. But if they lose this game, and every other team, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, and the Miami Dolphins, if they all win, Indianapolis is no longer in the playoffs. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. Like I said, Indianapolis is going to win this game, and they'll probably win it pretty handedly. So we can almost say that Indianapolis is going to be a playoff team, it would take a weird circumstance for Indianapolis to lose this game. Although, again, we have to remember that Jacksonville's one win on the season, way back in Week 1, was against the Indianapolis Colts. That may make things interesting. However, I think that's a much different Jacksonville team. When you lose 14 straight games, about to be 15 straight games, that demoralizes you, and so they're not going to win this game. I have the Indianapolis Colts beating the Jacksonville Jaguars. The next matchup, again a battle of AFC South opponents, sees the Tennessee Titans going into Houston to take on the Texans. I think this game has a chance to be a close game, especially if they get the A version of Deshaun Watson throwing the ball. But ultimately, as I just previewed, Houston hasn't been able to slow down the run, and well, the run is what Tennessee does the very best with King Henry, the NFL's leading rusher. I think if Tennessee is willing to run the ball with Henry at least 20 times, they should be in a good position to win this game. And I'm pretty sure Tennessee does have the division already clinched up. So again, that may make things a little bit closer than what some may expect. But ultimately, I am picking Tennessee to win this game. And again, Tennessee is a playoff team in this coming year as well. And by the way, this was probably my worst prediction this entire season. When I said that Tennessee was going to be a 4-win team this season, okay, I'm going to own it. Yes, that was my bad. I thought Tennessee was not going to be able to repeat what they did last season when they went to the AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs. But ultimately, they've proved me wrong. They've showed that they deserve to be in the playoffs. And so congratulations to the Tennessee Titans. The next matchup is a battle of NFC South teams as the Atlanta Falcons go into Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. Now, Atlanta is currently a 4-win team, and I think they would be better off just losing this game to ensure that they get a top 5 pick. However, if we remember just a few weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, Tampa Bay needed that furious comeback in the fourth quarter just to beat the Atlanta Falcons when they were losing 24-7 going into like the end of the third, beginning of the fourth quarter. Ultimately, the Buccaneers did win this game, and I think the Buccaneers are going to be a little bit more prepared for this game, and they're going to be able to handle business. Their coach, Bruce Arians, has already went onto the record saying that he intends to play his starters the entire game and treat this like a playoff game. So I'm expecting Tampa Bay to really be able to take care of business and handle the Atlanta Falcons in a big way. And so I have the Buccaneers winning this game against the Atlanta Falcons. Again, I should have said this too, but Tampa Bay is a playoff team. They are locked into a wild card spot in the NFC. The next matchup of NFC East teams has huge playoff implications. There is still no clear-cut winner in the NFC East as who's going to be the division winner. Currently, the Washington football team is on the fast track to being the division winners. All they have to do is win, and they're in, and they clinch their division. However, they're going up against a tough Philadelphia team that's proven to be very capable these last few weeks. Washington, it's still up in the air who's going to be their starting quarterback. They're hoping Alex Smith will be able to go on Sunday and be able to lead that Washington football team. And I think if he does, that's incredible. After 2 seasons ago when he absolutely shattered his leg, I think it broke it in half. And after, I think it was like 20 surgeries, he nearly had to get his leg amputated. He nearly died. We all know the whole story. Yeah, here he is quarterbacking this Washington football team, maybe into the playoffs. However, even if he does play, that's not to say that he's going to be fully healthy and able to really throw the ball. Like I mentioned before, Dwayne Haskins was just released by the Washington football team after his off-field antics. And rumor comes out that he really wasn't a good on-field player, and especially in the locker room either. So it was probably for the best that they did release him, just so he can get right as a person. And ultimately, they turned to Tyler Heinicke, I believe that's how you say it, at the end of last week's game to finish up that game against Carolina. So if Alex Smith isn't ready to go this week, it's going to be Tyler Heinicke that's going to be starting for the Washington football team, and again, in a must-win game for the Washington football team. Either way, whether it's Alex Smith or Tyler Heinicke, I'm picking the Philadelphia Eagles to win this game and really give a big blow to the Washington football team. So now at this point, if Washington does lose this game, they need the New York Giants to win the game against Dallas just for them to make it into the playoffs. And however, our next game on this list is, again, the Dallas Cowboys versus the New York Giants. I have the Dallas Cowboys winning this game. That's right. When everybody thought the Dallas Cowboys were dead in the water, when they were a 2-win and 10-loss team, 2 wins and 9-loss team, whatever it was, I have officially the Dallas Cowboys winning this division, winning the NFC East, and advancing to the playoffs. Now, this is a crazy scenario, but remember, this is a crazy year that we've been in, this year 2020 and this NFL season. But that's right. So I have the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Washington football team and the Dallas Cowboys beating the New York Giants so that the Dallas Cowboys are the representative in the NFC East in the playoffs. Our next matchup on the list is a battle of AFC East teams. Both of these teams are not going to be playoff teams. We have the New York Jets going into New England to take on the Patriots. This may very well be Cam Newton's last game starting as a professional quarterback. However, I think that New England overall is the better team than the New York Jets. I know New York is coming off of 2 straight victories, but that doesn't change the fact that they're still going up against Bill Belichick, that defense, a team that can really run the ball and pound it down your throats with Cam Newton, Sony Michel, and all their other weapons. I'm picking the New England Patriots to beat the New York Jets here, and I think really assert their dominance and finish the season on somewhat of a high note, finishing with a record of 7-9, and really locking the New York Jets into that number 2 slot for their pick. So I have the Patriots beating the Jets here. This next matchup is a bit of a surprise to some people if you're not really paying attention. The Los Angeles Chargers are taking on the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium, and the Los Angeles Chargers are the favored team here. That's right. The only reason why the Los Angeles Chargers are the favorite team is Kansas City will not be starting Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, and from what I hear, most of their starters will not be playing this game. If you remember way back in, I believe it was week 3 or week 4, when the Chargers and Chiefs first played each other in LA, the Chargers nearly beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and they had to go to overtime just for Kansas City to win that game. So I think that, if you're a Chargers fan, you have to be very excited right now moving forward after this season. You have, for sure, your franchise quarterback and a lot of pieces around Justin Herbert. You guys still have Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, and a bunch of other, it depends. It remains to be seen what they do with Hunter Henry this offseason. But there's a lot to be excited about if you're a Chargers fan. So, and I think that this game, even though the Chiefs aren't going to play a lot of their starters, it's going to keep that excitement up, as I have the Los Angeles Chargers beating the Kansas City Chiefs here in Week 17. Now, that'll mean that Kansas City is going to fall to a record of 14 wins and 2 losses. However, it really doesn't make much of an impact, because no matter what happens, win, lose, or draw, Kansas City is already locked into the number 1 seed and is guaranteed a first-round bye in the playoffs. So the way that Coach Andy Reid sees it is that he's given his players 2 weeks off to prepare for the playoffs. And so I think that's a smart move. But ultimately, I have the Chargers beating the Chiefs here in this matchup. The next matchup is a battle of NFC North teams. Both of these teams also are already eliminated from the playoffs. We have the Minnesota Vikings going into Detroit to take on the Lions. Now, I think Dalvin Cook is an absolute beast. My mid-season pick was for Dalvin Cook to be the Offensive Player of the Year. I had him beating out Derrick Henry. I don't quite think that's going to happen anymore. And I think Devontae Adams is even more deserving of the Offensive Player of the Year over Dalvin Cook. But that's not to take anything away from Dalvin Cook and what he's done all season. He should still be an all-pro running back this season. He's definitely made it to a Pro Bowl. And I think ultimately, it's because of Dalvin Cook and that running game why I'm going to pick the Minnesota Vikings to beat the Detroit Lions here. Last week, Matt Stafford got hurt on the first drive of the game and didn't return to that game. So it remains to be seen if he's even going to play this game against the Vikings. And well, if he doesn't play, that's even more reason for the Minnesota Vikings to be the successful team here in this matchup. And I think Minnesota wants to finish the season on a high note. This has definitely been a disappointment for them all season, as they were a playoff team for the past 3 or 4 years. And they did just lock up Kirk Cousins again to another contract extension. So, I think the Vikings will win this game against Detroit and really flex their muscles on them. So I have the Vikings beating the Detroit Lions. The next matchup sees the Pittsburgh Steelers going into Cleveland to take on the Browns. Browns fans, I'm so sorry that you guys lost last week against the New York Jets. That was a huge disappointment. You had your chances to lock up a playoff spot, and you guys blew it to a 1-win team in the most Cleveland Browns way. However, with that being said, I'm not ready to pull the plug on their season yet, as they're going up against a Pittsburgh team that has already announced that they will be resting quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. Remember, from last season, this was the infamous game with Mason Rudolph and Myles Garrett really getting into that altercation where Myles Garrett ripped off the helmet of Mason Rudolph and used it as a club as he swung it straight at Mason Rudolph's face. Okay, it had Myles Garrett suspended for the rest of that season. I think it ended up being like 6 or 8 games. So this is going to be a bit of a revenge game for Mason Rudolph. However, I think that Cleveland, with them playing their starters, with Myles Garrett on defense, and Baker Mayfield actually getting some of his wide receivers back, I think that Cleveland is the better team here. I am going to pick the Cleveland Browns to win this game and to lock up and finally reach the postseason for the first time in over a decade. So I have the Cleveland Browns beating the Pittsburgh Steelers here in this Week 17 matchup. The next matchup sees the Baltimore Ravens going into Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Again, Baltimore is one of those 10 wins and 5 loss teams where they have to at least win this game just to have a chance to make it to the playoffs. Obviously, I'm not going to pick the Cincinnati Bengals to beat the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Baltimore Ravens have been the hottest team the past 3 or 4 weeks, the past month. When every game has been either a do-or-die situation for the Ravens, they've really stepped up to the task and handled business and have been blowing out teams left and right. So I see the same thing happening here against the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm picking the Baltimore Ravens to win this game. And again, really ensure that they really do everything that they can to actually make a playoff spot. So again, I have the Baltimore Ravens beating the Cincinnati Bengals. Our next matchup is a battle of NFC North teams with huge playoff implications. The Green Bay Packers are going into Chicago to take on the Bears. If Green Bay wins this game, they are guaranteed the number 1 seed in the playoffs and have that first round bye. So they do have a lot to play for. If you're Aaron Rodgers, you're looking for that illustrious 3rd MVP award, which, by the way, I do think he is going to win that MVP. He's been the best quarterback all season long. And if you're the Chicago Bears, you're in a must-win situation. If you win, you're in the playoffs. If you lose, then you also need the Cardinals to lose this game against a banged-up Los Angeles Rams team in order to make the playoffs. So both of these are almost must-win games for both of these teams. Ultimately, though, I'm going to pick the better team, even though they're on the road. I'm picking the Packers to win this game. Listen, the duo between Rodgers and Davante Adams has been on fire, has been the best tandem all season long, and I don't see us stopping or being slowed down here. Of course, Chicago's going to do everything they can to slow that down, but if they do that and they're not loading up the box, Aaron Jones can really have a monster game this week. The last time these two teams played, I believe the combination of Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams rushed for about $180 against the Chicago Bears. So again, if they decide that they want to keep their 2 deep safeties and really double up on Adams all game long, that's going to leave running lanes wide open for the Packers. So it's a pick your poison kind of game for the Chicago Bears. And they're really going to need to bring their A-game offense with Trubisky and company in order to keep up with the Green Bay Packers. Ultimately, I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I have the Green Bay Packers winning this game against the Chicago Bears. So Bears fans, you're going to need a little bit of help just to get into the playoffs. Our next matchup is a battle of NFC South opponents as the New Orleans Saints goes into Carolina to take on the Panthers. Now, there's not too much going on for the New Orleans Saints other than you just want to make sure that Drew Brees is right and ready to go for the playoffs. Again, there's that chance that if Green Bay loses this game and Seattle loses the game and New Orleans wins, then they can get into that number 1 seed as well. However, as I mentioned before, Green Bay is currently the number 1 seed. I have them winning their matchup against the Chicago Bears. So it's not like New Orleans can really do too much as far as their seeding goes. With that being said, whether or not they're running Drew Brees out there at quarterback, or they're running Taysom Hill, or they're even running Jameis Winston, I'm picking the New Orleans Saints to win this game. I think it's not so much of the offensive firepower that has me thinking that the Saints could be a Super Bowl team, but it's been their defense and their pass rush more specifically that has me believing that this version of the Saints team could actually make a deep run into the playoffs. Now, if you're Carolina, you're coming off a good win last week against the Washington football team, and really you're just looking to again some more feel-good moments this season. They've been, I think, this entire season for the most part without Christian McCaffrey, And even so, they've still managed to get, 6 or 7 wins this season? So that looks good for them moving forward, especially going into next week, where they're really going to try to be a playoff team and really push for that NFC South crown. So with that being said, again, I'm picking the New Orleans Saints to beat the Carolina Panthers. The next matchup sees the Miami Dolphins taking on the Buffalo Bills. The Miami Dolphins, much like the Indianapolis Colts, the Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Ravens, are in a must-win situation in order for them to be a playoff team. They're coming off of that very narrow victory last week against the Las Vegas Raiders, where they had to kick a last-second field goal in order to win that game. The Buffalo Bills have almost ensured that they will not be playing the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs this season until the AFC Championship game comes around. They are locked into either the number 2 or the number 3 seed, which is right where the Buffalo Bills want to be. Now, their coach hasn't actually announced that he will not be playing their starters, but there's really no reason for him to be running Josh Allen and company and Stephon Diggs, all of them out there, and risk an injury. Because like I said, not much can come out of this game. Either way, they're going to be playing week 1 in the playoffs, the first week of the playoffs, and taking on whatever the lowest wildcard team is. So I think if you're the Buffalo Bills, you want to get your players some rest. So with that being said, and they might run Josh Allen out there for a few snaps, a quarter, whatever it is, just so he stays in rhythm. But he won't be playing the whole game. I can promise you that, especially against a tough Miami defense that gets after the quarterback, really. So with that being said, I'm picking the Miami Dolphins to win this game here against the Buffalo Bills and try to sneak into the playoffs. I think as of right now, if the season ended, I think it's Miami that's on the outside looking in just due to all the tie-breaking procedures. And so, again, even if they win this game, they still need some more help just to get into the playoffs. So it remains to be seen what exactly happens. But I have the Dolphins beating the Buffalo Bills in this Week 17 matchup. Now moving to our NFC West opponents, we have the Seattle Seahawks going into San Francisco to take on the 49ers. And mind you, this is a 49ers team that still only has 1 victory at home all season long. They've been absolutely atrocious at home. They've been a much better road team as they have 5 wins on the road and only 1 win here at home. And they're not going to get their second win here against the Seattle Seahawks. I have the Seattle Seahawks beating the San Francisco 49ers in this Week 17 matchup. And besides, they're not even going to be playing in Santa Clara. They're still playing their home games in Arizona. So it still is a bit of a road game for them, but still they're going to be given the home field advantage. Like I said, I have the Seattle Seahawks beating the 49ers here. For Seattle, there's a chance that they may get the number 1 seed. Like I said, they have to win. They need Green Bay to lose. They need New Orleans to lose in order for them to get that number 1 seed. But like I mentioned earlier, I have Green Bay beating Chicago, so I don't think that'll happen. And they'll pretty much be locked into that number 2 seed and taking on either the Arizona Cardinals or the Chicago Bears in the playoffs. Our next matchup of NFC West opponents sees the Arizona Cardinals going into Los Angeles to take on the Rams. Last week, Jared Goff injured his thumb, ultimately broke his thumb against the Seattle Seahawks, and he had surgery at the beginning of this past week in order to repair his thumb, just so he may be ready for the playoffs, but he will not be playing this week in Week 17. Now, there's still a chance that the Los Angeles Rams do not get into the playoffs. If they lose and the Arizona Cardinals win and the Chicago Bears win, Los Angeles will not be going to the playoffs this season. Now, I am picking the Arizona Cardinals to win this game here against the Los Angeles Rams. Again, Jared Goff isn't going to be their starting quarterback. It's looking like Blake Bortles may be the starting quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams, or some other guy who I couldn't even tell you his name. So either way, this doesn't bode well for the Los Angeles Rams. Of course, we all know Sean McVay is an excellent coach, and he's probably going to do all he can for whoever is the starting quarterback to be successful. But sometimes that just isn't enough, and I'm picking the Arizona Cardinals, the healthier team here, to win this game in a must-win game matchup for both of these teams. I think the Cardinals are going to be the more successful team, and I have the Cardinals beating the Rams. So our last matchup on this Week 17 slate sees the Las Vegas Raiders going into Denver to take on the Broncos. And, well, neither of these teams are going to the playoffs. And much like last season when the Las Vegas Raiders started out 6-4 and lost 5 of their next 6 games, the same thing is happening here as I'm picking the Denver Broncos to beat the Las Vegas Raiders. And even after Las Vegas Raiders started out 6-4 this season, After this loss, they will have lost 5 of their final 6 games to finish with a record of 7 wins and 9 losses. So that's it for our Week 17 matchups. Just to run through them again, the first matchup is my lock of the week, the Indianapolis Colts beating the Jacksonville Jaguars. The next matchup is the Tennessee Titans beating the Houston Texans, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beating the Atlanta Falcons, the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Washington Football Team, the Dallas Cowboys beating the New York Giants, the New England Patriots beating the New York Jets, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Kansas City Chiefs, Minnesota Vikings beating the Detroit Lions, Cleveland Browns beating the Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens over the Cincinnati Bengals, Green Bay Packers beating the Chicago Bears, New Orleans Saints over the Carolina Panthers, the Miami Dolphins beating the Buffalo Bills, the Seattle Seahawks beating the San Francisco 49ers, the Arizona Cardinals beating the Los Angeles Rams, and for my upset of the week, the Denver Broncos beating the Las Vegas Raiders. Alright guys, thank you for an excellent 2020 NFL season. This has been another episode of the Randall Handles Football Podcast. Thank you all for listening.
I don't care who you play. Whether it's a high school team, a junior college team, a college team, much less an NFL team, when you turn the ball over 5 times, 4 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown, 3 others in field position to set up touchdowns, you ain't gonna beat anybody I just talked about. Anybody. All right? And that was a disgraceful performance, in my opinion. We threw that game. We gave it away by doing that. We gave them the friggin' game. In my opinion, that sucked. What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.